Honda just threw a wrench into the electric revolution, and nobody saw it coming. No batteries, no cords, no waiting. Just a new kind of combustion that runs clean. They call it an e-fuel engine, and if the early reports are true, it could make every electric motorcycle out there look outdated overnight. But here's the thing, this isn't hype. Honda's been testing synthetic fuel tech for years, and now it's finally roaring to life inside the Fireblade. We're talking carbon-neutral combustion that still growls like a real engine. Stay with me till the end, because if Honda pulls this off, it won't just change the industry, it'll change what kind of motorcycles we get to ride next. What's happening? In one Tokyo press event, Honda dropped a revelation that detonated across the motorcycle world. A fully functional e-fuel engine that doesn't need charging, doesn't burn fossil fuel, and doesn't compromise performance. It wasn't a concept, it wasn't a whisper of what's next. It was here, real, running, and mounted inside a machine every rider already knows by name. The CBR 1000 RRR, Fireblade SP. As reporters scrambled for sound bites, Honda engineers simply smiled. They knew they hadn't just improved an engine, they had rewritten the future of mobility. The Fireblade's new power plant doesn't hum like an electric motor. It roars, it breathes, it reacts, and it runs on a renewable synthetic fuel made from captured carbon and clean energy. The crowd stood stunned as test footage rolled. No cords, no batteries, just speed, sound, and zero guilt. By the time the press conference ended, phones were lighting up across the industry. Electric startups went silent on social media, investors pulled emergency meetings, and one whispered headline started spreading faster than any marketing campaign ever could. Honda just made every electric motorcycle obsolete. But behind that stage and spotlight, the real story was the machine that carried the secret. A legend, reborn for a new age. The Fireblade Reborn. If Honda wanted to send a message, they couldn't have chosen a better messenger than the Fireblade SP. This wasn't some eco-experiment wrapped in plastic. This was Honda's flagship, the symbol of precision and speed. For over 3 decades, the Fireblade carried the soul of Japanese engineering, a perfect balance of fury and finesse. Now, it's the proving ground for an engine meant to outlive the electric era entirely. When the curtain lifted, the familiar silhouette of the Fireblade stood under bright white lights, lean, sharp, and unmistakably alive. But inside that chassis, the heartbeat had changed. The first test riders came back shaking their heads, not in disbelief, but in awe. "It sounds like freedom again," one of them said, "but cleaner." Every gear shift sang like an anthem. Every throttle pull felt like defiance. The Fireblade wasn't just reborn. It was rebelling. A mechanical middle finger to the silent, battery-powered future everyone said was inevitable. And while the crowd cheered the spectacle, deep inside Honda's research labs, the quiet revolution that made it possible had already been years in motion. If you're into the truth behind real engineering breakthroughs like this, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. The electric mirage. For years, electric motorcycles were painted as flawless heroes, but riders on the ground saw a different story. The real costs showed up not in glossy ads, but in monthly bills and mined landscapes. Batteries didn't grow on trees. They came from lithium, nickel, and cobalt, torn from the earth, in industrial scars that stretched for miles. When those batteries wore out, recycling them proved expensive and patchy. What looked clean on the highway often left a darker footprint before the first mile was ridden. Charging time was another truth few wanted to admit. Even with fast chargers, riders waited half an hour or more to fill what a gas tank did in 5 minutes. For long tours, that delay wasn't progress, it was a deal breaker. And while electric bikes promised low running costs, the infrastructure strained under demand. Power grids groaned during heat waves, and in many towns, public chargers sat broken or blocked. Add in the rising cost of electricity, and the math didn't feel as futuristic as the brochures claimed. Riders began to ask the same question Honda engineers were quietly exploring. If going electric meant trading one dependency for another, was it really the solution? That skepticism grew, especially among those who valued reliability over trends. So when Honda revealed a carbon-neutral engine that used existing fueling systems and renewable sources, the disbelief quickly turned into cautious curiosity. Maybe, just maybe, the future wasn't electric after all. Honda's engineers had been perfecting something even more audacious. If you want the same gear and accessories I ride with, they're linked right below. Inside Honda's hidden workshop, deep in the industrial heart of Suzuka, Japan, the same soil where Soichiro Honda first forged his dream, a small team had been working away from the spotlight. They called it Project Phoenix. It wasn't about replacing engines, but resurrecting them. The workshop was off limits to outsiders, guarded by non-disclosure agreements and layered security. But according to insiders who later spoke to the Japanese press, the sound from inside was unmistakable, a combustion roar, pure and alive, echoing down sterile test corridors. It was the heartbeat of something that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. The process began years earlier. Honda engineers studied carbon capture systems, synthetic fuel chemistry, and micro-turbine refinements long before most manufacturers cared. They weren't chasing applause, they were chasing perfection. Prototype engines were tested in compact forms, then scaled to handle the precision tuning demanded by the Fireblade SP. In early trials, the team achieved near zero emissions output without losing torque response, a feat previously thought impossible for performance bikes. The data looked unreal, but every number checked out. When the Fireblade prototype roared alive at Suzuka, its sound blended nostalgia and science water vapor, not smoke, rising behind it. Nearly carbon neutral yet fully alive, it marked a turning point. While others buried combustion, Honda revived it. The e-fuel Fireblade proved motorcycles can be sustainable, powerful, and still sound like freedom. And that realization set the stage for what came next. Inside the e-fuel core. At its heart, the e-fuel engine is built on a simple but radical idea: to keep combustion alive without burning the planet. Honda's chemists start by pulling carbon dioxide straight out of the air. Using renewable electricity from wind and solar sources, they separate hydrogen from water molecules, then combine it with that captured carbon. The result is a synthetic fuel almost identical to gasoline in performance, but nearly neutral in emissions. When it burns inside the cylinder, it releases only the carbon it borrowed, not new carbon dug from the ground. It's a closed loop, all without the fossil footprint. Honda's engineers compare it to breathing. Air in, air out, balance maintained. The process doesn't rely on mining rare metals or building vast battery networks. It's made from the same elements that built life itself: air, water, and electricity. That simplicity is what makes it powerful. Instead of reinventing the infrastructure of the world, it uses what already exists. The same fuel stations, tanks, and pumps could serve a new generation of cleaner combustion. For riders, nothing changes. You still fill the tank, feel the throttle, hear life ignite. Yet beneath that ritual lies precision chemistry defying electric promises. No chords, no waiting, no silence, just motion that gives back what it takes. Innovation without losing identity. And nowhere does that balance of old and new come together more perfectly than inside Honda's reimagined Fireblade engine. Re-engineering the Fireblade. When Honda's engineers decided to fit the e-fuel system into the CBR 1000 RRR Fireblade SP, they faced a mechanical puzzle. E-fuel burns cleaner, but slightly cooler and slower than gasoline, so the entire combustion system had to be recalibrated. They raised compression ratios, adjusted valve timing, and fine-tuned injection mapping to extract every ounce of efficiency without losing the pulse that defines the Fireblade's character. The result wasn't a timid experiment. It was an engine that breathed sharper, spun faster. Inside the frame, lighter composite alloys replaced older metals to offset the added fuel delivery hardware. The cooling system was redesigned to keep the narrower temperature window steady under extreme loads. New coatings on cylinder walls reduced friction to near zero levels. And the exhaust design preserved that signature Honda rasp. The mechanical growl that tells you the machine is alive, not whispering. Every adjustment served one purpose: to keep the Fireblade's spirit intact while making it cleaner than any superbike before it. The Fireblade didn't whisper, it roared back to life. This wasn't a prototype or compromise. Honda hadn't built an experiment. They'd engineered a comeback with teeth. It's not theory anymore, it's track-ready metal. And the next question every rider asked was simple: what does it cost to live with? The business equation. In the real world, innovation means nothing if it drains wallets faster than tanks. Honda's e-fuel engine was designed with economics in mind. Synthetic fuel production remains expensive today, but unlike early battery technology, its cost drops as scale grows. Current estimates put it just above premium gasoline, and refueling takes the same 3 to 5 minutes as always. For daily riders, that means no hours tethered to a wall, no infrastructure overhaul at home, and no waiting in line at charging stations. Over a 5-year span, maintenance costs favor the e-fuel Fireblade by a wide margin. Riders get what they've always valued most: independence. When a machine can be repaired with tools instead of firmware, ownership feels honest again. Electric bikes lose value fast, but the e-fuel Fireblade holds steady modern, compliant, yet timelessly mechanical. Competitors on edge. When word of Honda's e-fuel breakthrough hit the trade circuits, shockwaves rippled through boardrooms. At Yamaha headquarters, internal memos leaked within days. Engineers were reportedly reassigned from battery research to alternative combustion programs. Harley-Davidson's investors called emergency meetings, demanding updates on synthetic fuel compatibility for their touring line. Even smaller electric startups, once riding the hype wave, began quietly shifting marketing budgets away from full electric toward hybrid adaptation. The landscape shifted almost overnight. Industry insiders said the mood at global shows was part disbelief, part envy. Many executives had written off internal combustion years ago, pouring billions into battery contracts and government incentives. Now, the prospect of a carbon-neutral engine threatened to undo that entire narrative. Suppliers started hedging bets. Steel and component manufacturers began contacting Honda's R&D division to explore licensing. Market analysts projected that if just 10% of future production went e-fuel, it could erase a decade of battery dominance. Pressure mounted as electric giants scrambled to stay relevant. One European CEO called Honda's move a betrayal of progress. But riders saw truth, not treason. The soul of a motorcycle lives in connection, not kilowatts. Power was shifting, and everyone felt it. But the real shakeup started far from corporate boardrooms. Out where bikes are tuned by hand, engines speak in echoes, and riders decide what the future truly sounds like. The soul of riding returns. When the e-fuel Fireblade finally hit the testing circuits, something remarkable happened. Riders stopped talking about chemistry and started talking about feeling. The first twist of the throttle brought back a sensation many thought they'd lost forever. The vibration through the bars, the rising note of the exhaust, the way the machine responded with heartbeat precision. It felt alive. For years, engineers had tried to make motorcycles cleaner, quieter, and more efficient. But in doing so, they had stripped away something vital. Honda had managed to bring it back without breaking the new rules of a greener world. Test riders described it as a paradox. A bike that sounded fierce, yet ran clean. That kicked like the old Fireblade, yet burned its fuel almost guilt-free. The connection between hand and engine was immediate again. There was feedback, resistance, and rhythm. The language real riders speak. Electric motorcycles could outrun it in silence. but they couldn't match its soul. For those who grew up wrenching on carburetors and syncing throttles by ear, it was validation. The mechanical era wasn't dead. It had just evolved. This new Fireblade didn't just win hearts, it restored faith in the craft of riding itself. And when faith returned, so did the places that had always kept the spirit alive. The small garages that never stopped believing in engines. The garage stays open. The ripple effect of Honda's e-fuel engine reached beyond factories and showrooms. In small-town garages, the kind that smell like oil and dusted aluminum, a quiet celebration began. For years, mechanics watched electric vehicles creep into the market and wondered what that meant for their future. You can't tune a circuit board or feel a torquey wrench bite into a sensor port. But now, the news from Honda meant the trade was safe, maybe even reborn. E-fuel engines use familiar systems: pistons, valves, spark, compression. The parts may be refined, but the fundamentals remain the same. Independent shops could still rebuild, adjust, and personalize machines without proprietary software locking them out. That meant riders could keep their relationships with local mechanics, the people who turned wrenches long before laptops entered the bay. The community of grease, grit, and know-how stayed intact. "We can work on these," a veteran mechanic said, and that changed everything. The phrase spread through forums like wildfire. It wasn't just about engines, it was hope. Honda's e-fuel design didn't replace independence. It reignited it, keeping every garage light burning bright. But something even bigger was happening out on the road. A cultural shift where riders from rival brands started to realize they were all chasing the same thing. If you want more deep dives into the machines reshaping the motorcycle world, make sure you're subscribed. Every week, we uncover the stories other channels skip. Real riders, real engines, and the truth that keeps this culture alive. The new brotherhood. Motorcycle culture has always thrived on rivalry. Harley against Honda, cruisers versus sport bikes. Yet, when the e-fuel Fireblade made headlines, that rivalry started to fade into something unexpected: respect. Riders across camps recognized what Honda had done. They didn't see a corporate stunt. They saw a defense of everything motorcycles stood for. Even those who swore by V-twins admitted it took guts to keep combustion alive when everyone else surrendered to the plug. Online, you could see the shift. Harley loyalists called it a real move, not marketing. Sport bike fans cheered the return of power that didn't hide behind silence. Forums once filled with arguments about emissions turned into debates about how soon other brands might follow. The Fireblade became a unifier, not by branding, but by belief. It reminded everyone that riding wasn't just about speed or brand pride. It was about connection, craft, and rebellion against conformity. From Texas to Tokyo, crowds gathered to hear combustion's song again, the rhythm that carried generations. The e-fuel revolution didn't erase identity. It revived it, proving it's not the logo that matters, but the heartbeat still alive inside every machine. That unity wasn't just cultural. It had economic and political echoes stretching across oceans and industries, supply lines and sovereignty. The deeper consequence of Honda's breakthrough reached into the global balance of trade. Electric vehicles depend heavily on lithium, cobalt, and rare earth minerals, materials controlled by a handful of nations. For years, that meant one geopolitical truth. Whoever controlled the mines controlled the market. Honda's e-fuel program threatened to flip that power dynamic on its head. By producing synthetic fuel from captured carbon and renewable energy, nations could create their own supply chains. No more shipping batteries across oceans or waiting for mining contracts to clear. The fuel could be produced locally, even regionally, using solar or wind farms. For countries that once worried about energy dependence, e-fuel offered something close to self-sufficiency. In Japan, government officials quietly hailed the Fireblade announcement as a national milestone, proof that innovation could protect both the environment and industrial sovereignty. For riders, it wasn't politics, it was pride. Their fuel could come from home, not compromise. E-fuel meant motorcycles stayed in the future without apology. It wasn't just technology, it was freedom reborn. Proof that Honda had sparked something unstoppable and deeply human. And while nations began to re-evaluate their strategies, inside Honda's boardrooms, another revelation took shape. This wasn't a lucky strike. It was the product of a plan decades in the making. The strategy behind the curtain. Long before headlines screamed about electric revolutions, Honda was already laying the groundwork for something different. While competitors raced to announce battery platforms, Honda engineers quietly filed patents and funded laboratories focused on clean combustion. It wasn't hesitation, it was patience. The company's internal roadmap stretched back over 2 decades, rooted in a simple belief: you don't abandon what works, you evolve it. That philosophy defined Honda since the days of Soichiro himself, who built his empire on resilience, not reaction. The first steps appeared invisible to the public. Research grants for carbon capture projects, partnerships with renewable energy firms in Japan and Europe, small controlled experiments on fuel reforming. Each one seemed disconnected, but together they formed the backbone of the e-fuel breakthrough that would later shake the industry. When other companies dumped billions into battery gigafactories, Honda invested in chemistry and efficiency. It was the long game, a bet that the world would eventually see that sustainability doesn't require silence. Honda's R&D team called it Project Continuum, proving combustion could evolve without losing soul. Years of silent prototypes, each cleaner and smarter, built toward this moment. When the e-fuel Fireblade roared alive, it wasn't luck. It was 20 years of precision. And now that future is forcing the world's regulators to face a question they'd tried to bury. Policy shockwaves? The shock didn't stop at dealerships or racetracks. It hit government offices and climate committees across the globe. For years, the European Union had been preparing strict bans on internal combustion engines, planning to end their sale entirely by 2035. But once Honda demonstrated a functional, near-zero emission e-fuel system, the discussion changed overnight. Lawmakers began to realize that banning engines wasn't the same as banning pollution. In early reports from Brussels and Tokyo, policymakers hinted that e-fuel might qualify for carbon-neutral exemptions under updated green mobility acts. Germany, which had already championed similar fuels for its automotive giants, threw public support behind the idea. Japan followed quickly, positioning itself as the global leader in synthetic fuel development. Even in the United States, where regulations are often divided by state lines, the Environmental Protection Agency began quietly reviewing data provided by Honda's research arm. Engineers who once felt ignored suddenly found their inboxes full of inquiries from energy and transportation agencies. For the engineers, it was vindication. Once dismissed as obsolete, their craft now rewrote the rules. Governments replaced bans with performance targets, letting clean combustion compete with electric power. The tide hadn't just shifted, it had turned. E-fuel wasn't a loophole, it was a bridge. But while the policymakers debated emissions on paper, a more tangible revival was already unfolding where it mattered most: inside the factories. The factory revival. For years, manufacturing workers feared extinction. The rise of automated electric production lines replaced skilled labor with robots and algorithms. Assembly plants that once echoed with the sound of tools now hummed with conveyor belts. But the introduction of Honda's e-fuel program began reversing that trend. The new engines required craftsmanship, machining, and precision tuning, skills that couldn't simply be automated. Across Japan, new hiring notices appeared. Honda reopened training centers that had been dormant since the mid-2000s, teaching young mechanics the discipline of engine assembly. In the United Kingdom and the United States, suppliers who once built crankcases, pistons, and exhaust systems found themselves back in demand. It wasn't nostalgia, It was necessity. E-fuel combustion demanded tighter tolerances and higher quality metals. Machines still built the parts, but it took human expertise to make them sing in harmony. Inside the Suzuka plant, workers described the mood as electric in the old-fashioned sense. Pride replaced anxiety. For decades, manufacturing had been treated as an obsolete art, a relic of the industrial past. But now, as production of e-fuel components ramped up, that pride returned. "We're building engines again," one supervisor told a local reporter. "Real engines, not batteries in boxes." The sentiment spread across continents. This was more than a technological shift. It was a cultural one. The dignity of creation, the feeling of making something that breathes, was back. That same spirit carried beyond the factory gates, reaching the very people these machines were built for. The riders who still believe freedom should sound like motion. Your ride, your future. When Honda unveiled the e-fuel Fireblade to the public, the message was simple but profound. The choice belongs to you. For years, riders were told the engine era was ending, that the next generation would never know the sound of a redline or the smell of fuel at dawn. But now, that prophecy had cracked. The e-fuel revolution proved that progress doesn't demand surrender. It demands innovation. Riders no longer had to pick between nostalgia and responsibility. They could have both. For owners, the implications went beyond performance. It meant that the bikes sitting in their garages didn't have to become museum pieces. The same fueling network could evolve to support synthetic blends, giving older models a second life under new regulations. It also meant that future riders would still learn the rhythm of gears and throttles, not just software updates. The freedom to modify, maintain, and truly know one's machine could survive the digital takeover. As the sun set on the track, Honda's CEO summed it up perfectly. They said the engine was history. Turns out, history just fired back. The e-fuel Fireblade proved the soul of combustion still burns bright. The future of riding won't be silent. It'll be cleaner, mechanical, and undeniably human. So here's the bottom line. If Honda's e-fuel Fireblade is the real deal, it means the ride we love doesn't have to fade into silence. The sound, the feel, the soul, it can all survive in a cleaner world. But that's only if riders like us still care enough to keep it alive. What do you think? Would you ride an e-fuel bike, or is it just another headline? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you still believe engines deserve a future, and subscribe. We've got more real talk coming your way.